Welcome back.
We're back.
We are back.
Woo!
And you knew I was going to say this because I did say it beforehand, although you were graciously offered to pretend I didn't make this joke already, but we are more colorful than ever. I don't know what's going on this week, but you and I are just rocking probably the most colorful attire we've had all year of
Yeah.
this show.
I feel like I look like I'm in like I don't know, a catalog for some cute store or something. My dog shirt and my
Nice.
my little hat. And your what color is that? What is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I knew you were going to put me on the spot about this too. And you know what, we're up for debate. Leave. This is not going to be the leave a comment CTA, but you can leave a comment if you want of what color am I wearing. I do want to give a shout out here. Folks can see
Ooh.
this is the official exclusive guests only as far as I know. Super Path hoodie from my interview with Jimmy Daly, the founder of
Wow.
Super Path last week. So big shout out to Jimmy. Appreciate him having me on his show. I think hopefully we'll maybe get him to kind of return the favor, and I would love to kind of continue the chat with him. But for now,
Yeah.
he and his team hooked me up with definitely a top 5 comfortable hoodie and salmon, peach, somewhere in between colored too. So
Maybe like a washed out raspberry. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I'm just gonna say it.
And I'm sure that
Yeah,
there is like a internal document in Superpath where that was specified. Like, give me washed out
completely.
raspberry or do not come back.
Yes. Well, I'm sure we can also put that link in the description below for those of you who are interested to that podcast that Greg was on, so you can check out the conversation, because I believe our conversation today is something that you actually touched on in that podcast not too long ago that we're going to be sort of expanding on today, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so I thought something that was really funny that came out of the show was the way Jimmy sort of summarized some of our talking points, like some of what we chatted about. And one of the bullet points he added, like uh, Greg Ciotti makes the case for video as the most important marketing trend, and then there was this parentheses, and he added, but for real this time. And I thought that was super funny and really kind of like distilled something I think like a key thing of like what he and I touched on, which is like it's hard to say with like a straight face these days, like, oh yeah, video is going to matter. Like you and I have already talked about this. Video already matters. We know this. But something he and I kind of unpacked a little bit more like precisely, I guess, is like video is kind of like this like forever trend. It kind of like is always a trend. It's kind of always mentioned in these like end of year state of marketing reports as like you got to look out for it next year. And I mentioned to him like whenever I see something that sort of like won't leave the discourse of either the public at large or in this case kind of more of our little slice of the internet and the marketing and the digital marketing community, right? It's usually fits like one of 3 categories. Like the first is like a trend that's like so it promises so much. It promises like a sort of ground shifting kind of development. But it's not living up to sort of like current expectations, or it's not really delivering. But the
Mhm.
promise, like the potential, is so great that it sort of keeps roping people back in. And I would sort of say like right now, VR kind of captures that. Like
Yeah.
there are very cool things you can kind of like dabble with VR and try. I would say based off of like what everybody believes the potential is, though, like we're very far out from being there. So, but VR just keeps coming back because it's so cool. It's so like weird to think about what would be possible, and so on and so on. Then you have this kind of like second category. So why else do things like not leave the discourse? I think the second category is stuff that's like, yes, it's exciting. We all think it has potential, but like year after year, we sort of uncover that like the iceberg goes deeper than we all thought that it originally went. So there was never a time where people like had their doubts or anything, but it was more so the excitement built over time, and maybe things sort of like macro trends happened that really sort of continued to favor this trend and really kind of like let it have like a super long runway to grow and become this big thing. And then in the third category, you have kind of like the world changing stuff that's like really both. Like There was like at the start a ton of excitement, a ton of potential, and then over time, like we realized that it was actually even bigger than that. Those
Hmm.
are like I think few and far in between. It's kind of like the internet or
Yeah.
potentially here like AI as a development, right? Um, so that's that really rare third group. The second group, though, is where I think video falls, like video for marketing specifically. Um, as soon as video started getting a little bit easier, like nobody had their doubts. Like no, there weren't really any sort of like video haters from day
Naysayers.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we all knew, this was going to be something, but I think like the enthusiasm for it, the investment the teams and businesses are willing to make in a video has sort of like swelled over time because of two things. Like, number one, like I mentioned, I think we kind of continue to discover reasons that it's valuable. And then I think number two, some macro things have played out that have sort of just like broke in video's favor. Kind of like maybe it could have broke one way or the other, but as things happened, it really ended up sort of being a benefit to video and gave it sort of like even more life as like a marketing channel, right?
Hmm.
So that was kind of a little bit of like what Jimmy and I touched on. I think for time he may have like cut like a bit of that to keep things like nice and crisp. And so I think it's a great time to maybe just like kind of unpack this a bit more, because I think this is really, I think if you ask most content marketing teams like right now as they do their 2024 planning, a lot of uncertainty, like a lot of uncertainty. I
Yeah.
think for that reason, like a lot of eyes being sort of drawn to video right now. Um, and so I think it's a really good time to consider, like, try to see things with clear eyes and say, all right, what is happening here? Like, why might I seriously look at video, this thing that's been around for over a decade, as a serious marketing channel? And why would I give it maybe even extra credence or extra seriousness today? Um, I don't think that there's a better time of the year to talk about it than like, next year planning season. So
Right.
that's that is the setup. That's kind of how we got to this topic. But yeah, excited to dig in on this one. And I would say like, um, maybe one of the things I hope to kind of arrive at is like just a very broad strokes view of like almost like the history of video here, like the arc of like what played out to
Hmm.
really benefit video over time. But I think like we'll get into in future episodes and future posts much more sort of like specifics in terms of like the data and stuff like that. So if this is a topic that really interests people, just know that like, we are really, I think, intrigued and drawn and hooked by this, and we'll be following up a lot about it too. So
Yeah, you better subscribe or else.
a lot of like, I think half of our shows have some sort of like threat to subscribe, which is I'm not sure something we should keep.
It's good cop, bad cop. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think to get started, as you were saying, yeah, I think um, a little bit of history of video and how, like, with changes in technology over the past 10 years, or maybe even more than that, probably like 15 years, um, why that has made video such a promising candidate for um, marketers and channel for marketers to use.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, I don't know, when I first started, I guess I started YouTube. I don't know. I was making YouTube videos probably 12 years ago, and I
Hmm.
was using like one of those like flip video cameras. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
if you remember those, and the quality was like so terrible. Like, if a marketer was trying to post a video with that quality now, like that would literally never fly.
Yeah.
So things have changed like so much. I'm literally recording on my phone right now. Like, speaking of, um, and the quality is like good enough. And I'm on vacation, so like I don't have my regular setup, but I still feel like it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, it's like crazy how much things can change in a decade to make like a channel like video so much easier to uh actually just make look quality.
Yeah. And I think you touched on one of the most like, this is the most easy to observe. I think like development, I would say, and like our first, definitely our first sort of point or first sort of thing that has been in video's favor, which is like the tech over the last like 10 years. improved to such a point that like finally the internet could supply all of the like latent demand that there was for video.
Yeah.
You touched on this, yes. Like I remember the era of like uh, companies selling literal standalone recording devices that like were not cameras, but they weren't phones.
Yeah.
But they promised HD, and HD at the time was like, I don't know, like 480p or something. Like
Yeah.
we were taking what we could get back then. I remember the first time I got an HD camera, it was like 720p, terrible
Yeah.
battery life, but I was like so happy with it because I was like, look how crisp and clear. And now you can record, in an insane HD quality just by tapping a button on your phone. It really
Yeah.
is worlds different. And if you take things back even further, I mean, YouTube has been around for a long time. Did not always have the capability to serve really high quality video, both on the audio
Yeah.
and video side of things. Definitely was like has been the easiest place to upload, but I even remember a time of like, you have to download this video file to watch this video, like that era.
Hmm.
So it was
Yeah.
rough out there. It was very rough out there. And I think like it's maybe false to believe that like demand for video grew over time. I think that's true to some extent for sure. But I think like in the early years from like kind of the early years of kind of like digital marketing channels really developing and being more mature and sophisticated, a lot of videos problem was just like the supply constraint. The supply side
Hmm.
was what was constrained. Like you could make video, but it was like so bad, like garbled audio, impossible to listen to. Accessing it was really difficult too. And things being so blurry as to be like essentially like unusable, unwatchable, or you don't have platforms like we're using right now. We often use like platforms like this to pull up data and charts and visuals and things to show people. You had really none of that. It was very very difficult to do. It was very manual. The gear
Yeah.
was left a lot to be desired. And so, yes, people have been making video on the internet since you could upload a video to the internet, but none of it was good. um,
Yeah.
and I think like that made it so that like video maybe seemed like it wasn't as preferred as text, but it was just simply the supply of great text far far outpaced video at the time, and for many years it did. um, and so I think that left video like out of reach, especially for a lot of small teams. And so you kind of had like you had that reality, and you had this other point which we'll dig into in just a second, but I think it pairs up. You also just had like text was working. um
Yeah.
Social platforms didn't have as many demands to be visual. Blog content that was just sort of like really blase SEO stuff worked at the time. And so you had this really kind of you had the like there's no pull to do it because this other stuff is
Yeah.
working. And then there's no sort of like push to do it either because you don't have all this data about customers demanding video, but you don't have that data because there's not a lot of great video to watch. Whereas like common sense would tell
Yeah.
you the format that takes zero effort to engage with, that's not only visual but also can be listened to if you want to be hands free, um, that can include all different kinds of sort of like assets and bells and whistles to help get your point across or to be more entertaining or educational. Of course that's going to become the everybody's preferred channel. Like the common sense would tell you that,
Yeah.
but the data was not telling you that. And again, I'll sort of rest my case or TLDR this. I think it was a supply side constraint. I think the video for demand was always sitting there in kind of the wings, waiting for
Yeah.
production to catch up. Yeah,
I mean, I think a lot of it also has to do with the video editing process. Like, there was nothing intuitive about the video editing process like 10 years ago to
yeah,
me, or 15 years ago. Like, it was something you really had to like try to learn and spend like hours learning. And now, obviously, there's so many more, you know, not only are there like automatic AI solutions that will help you get your video to like a better place, but also just like UI is better. Like you can get a little pop up telling you like, "Oh, use this," if it,
hmm
recognizes that um, need to split out or like cut out some silences or things. Like I think even just like yeah, the technological advancements in like UI and UX has like made video editing so much easier because like I think there was like to your point, there was the capability to for anyone to create a video, but like if you weren't cutting out the boring stuff, like no one cares. So
Yeah.
um but now like we know that and now it's easier than ever to actually accomplish completing the video, which I think was a like a bottleneck back then.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And I would also say like this is a I think this is sort of like an obvious point, but it's worth mentioning just so you know we don't leave it unmentioned. Is that like people's internet connections just got a lot better
Hmm.
too? Like
Yeah,
again, as when I recall those like early days of it, like uh, you had all the problems we mentioned, bad quality, uh, not as accessible. But then on like my end, it's like before we had sort of like cable internet, like at my house when I was younger. I mean, watching videos on dial-up was like an absolute nightmare. Like you would be like, "Oh, I can't wait to watch this in 30 minutes when it's fully done
yeah,
downloading." So I think that that's worth mentioning. Like internet across the globe has really become more accessible and has improved, and obviously phones and how they keep us kind of connected to the internet's a big part of this. But yeah, I think
yep,
all things considered, like so much around the ability to make and share a video is point blank like a reason why we finally see these demand numbers. And I think it's taken 10 years for that to like fully play out because none of those things were overnight. There was
yeah,
not one product that came out and made video production easy. There was not one software that just like came out and then from that day forward video production became easy. And obviously like internet infrastructure didn't improve overnight either. It's actually taken that many years to fully play out, you know?
yeah, completely. I mean, I think yeah, just having access to the internet, like 5G everywhere is a huge game changer. Like
Yeah.
now you can watch video wherever you are on your phone. Mobile video obviously has become like I feel like it's probably the place where people watch most of their video. And so like that just wasn't a thing before.
Yes.
Um
No, it was a horrible time of like potentially even leaving the computer on overnight to watch a long enough video. I would watch gaming videos back in the day, be like, it's a 30-minute video of someone playing games, and it'd be like, great, I'll be back after school when this is done downloading. and now if
right.
something takes longer than 5 seconds to load in 4K, I'm like, oh my God, who's got time for this? So
Yeah.
the change there really cannot be emphasized enough. um, I do think you mentioned on the mobile side, like something that, um, I think mobile played a big part of this, but I would say that the second point, the second sort of trend, or however you want to reference it, that really benefited video, that allowed it to be this like 10-year kind of trend in the making itself, was like the platform shifts that we saw play out on social media. So social media is wrapped up in video in a couple different ways. um, Number one, like you mentioned, it's the primary place where mobile video gets served, right? So mobile video became big just because mobile is big. But social media being kind of the place where video gets published and watched is really important. I think that the other thing though is that like over the past 10 years, those platforms have kind of been, I mean, how else can I put this? They've kind of been brutal to off-site traffic. Like they used to sort of reward publishers with off-site traffic in the very early days. That's what drew a lot of publishers and content creators to the platforms in the first place, outside of like the users who, on Facebook just wanted to connect with their family or what have you. Publishers showed up because they were getting traffic, but then
Yeah.
social platforms decided, wait a minute, like yes, that's valuable to you, but all of our value comes from when the user stays on the site. Um,
Yeah.
and I think the users of those platforms kind of voted with their behavior, which was like a lot of them kind of said through their actions, like, I'm fine with content just being served natively. The fact that I now log into a Facebook or a Twitter and don't see, quite as many links is not that big of a deal. I'm actually fine just getting the content right here.
Yeah.
Um, and so, you kind of had people, again, you had people voting with their behavior, but then you had these major sort of like internet players and these social media sites say like, we're just going to reward content that performs well in feed and on
Yeah.
platform. It has to be native to the platform. And so like theoretically, as this was happening, I suppose like any kind of content format could break out. And certainly on places like Twitter, there are a lot of big accounts that are still like primarily text. It's not like video sort of had like a monopoly or anything here, or just like totally pushed out other formats. But I mean, again, obviously, like when something is in the feed, like I don't think it's people having like, the goldfish level of attention spans or anything. I'm really confident actually that people do like and enjoy long form stuff. But when you're in feed, when you're getting content from a feed of stuff, you haven't actively searched it out and you don't even know what you're looking for, you just kind of logged in to be surprised. You do want stuff that's short and snappy and kind of
Hmm.
validates when the first couple seconds, like, yes, I'm interested in this, or no, I'm not. If I seek
Yeah.
something out, totally different story because I'm trying to find it out. So 20 minutes later, when I'm at the end of my third Wikipedia article, it's like totally fine. I was ready to, go down that rabbit hole. Whereas when I log into social, I have no idea what I'm in store for, and that's kind of why I logged in. So
Right.
if that's the state of things, all those things together, right? You have mobile driving, a ton of usage on social media, and being the place where a lot of videos being uploaded. Then you have these platforms sort of saying no to offsite linking, yes to native in-feed content. And then you have the way that they're serving these posts via a feed, which I think is very important because they all do this. Um, of course, video kind of shines in that world, right? It's like you can tell within 5 seconds, usually, especially if the publishers are making an attempt to, do a hook with their video or to make it very clear what it's about. You really can discern like yes or no. And then
Yeah.
TikTok kind of feels like the end game of that, where it was like they sort of skipped like, well, let's not even, you can't post anything but video. You can post a
Yeah.
little description, but it's just video, and we're going to build an algorithm that's so good at finding things that you want that even though the videos are short, we're still going to just like hit the mark every time and serve up stuff that is based around your interest. And a lot of people have covered like how impressed they are with how good TikTok is at targeting people in that way. Whole other story and discussion to that, but I do feel like TikTok represents a kind of like end game, and like it's a big reason why it did so well, because I think it sort of saw the reality and they were like, we're going to build a platform to be just literally about that stuff and cut all the rest and like cut the fluff
Yeah.
basically. So it's that I think is like where social media plays. It's a little bit more complicated. It's a little more tied up into video in different ways, but like all the recent developments of within social media platforms have been kind of similar. And I think they've all come to benefit video as a format, you know?
Yeah. I definitely think you're right. I also feel like sort of getting back to what we were talking about earlier when, you know, like just SEO, basic sort of bad SEO content was um, a large portion of like just marketers'
Yeah.
playbook.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the same was true for video for a long time. Once the like we were saying, the video technology was there, and then people realized like, oh, well, we can just kind of like make basic videos about our product or whatever, and that was working for a while. But I feel like now, given these like even newer platform models like TikTok, like brand videos or brand accounts like are pretty much flopping generally. I feel like across the board if they're just like straight up like branded video.
Or
um
unless they were already big from having
right,
had the chance to grow for 15 years or something. Yeah, totally.
exactly. And so now I feel like there's even like a push, um given that, yeah, given these feeds, for more like personalized or like personal face forward content, even for brands. Like, and I think that's something brands are still figuring out is like, you know, like the thought leadership thing is going to become
Mhm.
probably bigger, or having a face of the company, or talking about, you know, things that are interesting to consumers, not from a brand perspective, but from an individual perspective who like is within the brand. I feel like
Yeah,
that's like a huge platform sort of shift as well,
I
that
agree.
we've seen. Yeah,
I agree. And I think like you said, all this stuff like it gets intertwined. So I think like what you kind of just mentioned, this like we're on the precipice, we're on the verge of this shift of like more um sort of the individual accounts being rewarded. I think
yeah,
like that plays into kind of like brand accounts being again uh decreasingly I think important, especially for companies. Not every company can be Wendy's. Like you're frankly probably not that funny and you don't have a big of enough tam to warrant sort of like memes and jokes, the stuff that really sort of works well for brand accounts, it seems, on social media. So, and especially again, when you mentioned like B2B or sort of like just more products that are things people you use for utility or they want to get something out of them. Um, yeah, an individual is just like so much easier to connect with. I do worry a little bit that like brands will catch on to this and just pick a point person and then hope that the point person can just post the same old brand crap that the brand
right.
account was
Yeah,
doing. But I don't think that that's going to work. I think it's sort of the platforms are getting even smarter with what people engage with and what people engage with on a sort of like personal level. Yes, and kind of the more strictly consumer side is yes, like jokes and memes and funny and stuff like that. But like I think on the business side, on the B2B side, they really want to learn from other people. They want to learn from people's lived experiences. Um, like in Kapwing going out with, how we in this like kind of vague abstract, overcame the fear of being on camera versus like you and I sharing our actual lived experience doing that is just two totally different things.
yeah,
Like for one, my experience goes way outside of Kapwing. I don't have anything to pitch people on that. I just want to share sort of like how I got over it. And the incentive to do so is kind of clear without being too like smarmy or salesy of like, yes, I work for a video creation platform. I want to help other people with video, but I also just really would like to talk with you about this because it's something I have sweated before in the past. I've been worried about. I want to see how people kind of feel about it today, that kind of stuff. So there's this whole like world of content now that is really working for people on social media, especially in B2B. But I think broadly you'll see this even more in B2C too. Definitely B2C, maybe more so through like influencers and UGC and stuff like that. Whereas B2B, I think people are a little bit more comfortable having it come from like employees at the company. But either way, I think social is going to get more personal, more people driven, and you'll further see like kind of a diminished use case for the brand accounts. Like I think they'll still be important for some brands and for some purposes. For instance, like having an announcement go out through the brand account and maybe having employees kind of revolve their posts around that or something that really only the brand account can go out with. Maybe like the OpenAI saga last night. I think some of that stuff
hmm
had to go out through the brand account. So people were like, what
yeah.
is going on? But yeah, I think in terms of
But I
like
mean, even like all over Twitter on people's personal accounts,
yes,
like Sam Altman's account,
the
and also
story
like the
unfolded.
interim CEO, like
Yes,
was yeah, like exposing his own like personal thoughts, which I thought was
yes.
so interesting.
Versus like there was a time where more, the majority of companies it would have been like, maybe the official company tweet with a bit.ly link to the newsroom. And like
Yeah,
that would have been it, like it would not have unfolded across all of these like personal accounts, like you said.
yeah,
So I absolutely think that's going to play out. And then okay, so bringing this together, like why does that matter? I think video just makes a ton more sense, especially this like low fidelity, looks really clean and crisp, but it's not some like big film production style. I think that type of video works for individuals even better than it works for brands. I think people sort of expect that from individuals. They don't expect it to come across as like some sort of Apple level video. Um, Literally, people are fine with like you flipped on a camera and you just started talking to me one on one personally through your personal channel. So I think video will have sort of like yet another thing go its way, so to speak, which is like Social platforms want to reward individuals. Individuals make better use of like low fidelity video that's just like really helpful and has like decent production quality. And we already have all of these platforms set up to reward native engaging content that keeps you on the site. So
Right.
I think it's just one more thing that's sort of gonna like video is apparently the luckiest channel in all of marketing because it's if you took it to Vegas, it would roll sevens every time. Like it just seems to always work out in its favor, you know?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the opportunity is huge with video. Like you can make a video, yeah, theoretically, like you're saying, or not even theoretically, in practice, you can make a video in like a few minutes of you just on your phone talking at the camera. And if you say interesting things, it can have millions of views overnight. You didn't even have to do anything to promote it except for post it. Like the that's like pretty much impossible anywhere else at this
Hmm.
point.
Hmm.
So yeah.
I agree. And then so I think we kind of covered like I sort of think of things as like the pull and sort of the push. The pull is being sort of like what's like drawing people to do something. Um and then the push is sort of like what's like kind of like behind you. Like what's in the back kind of, forcing you in that direction. And I think for video, the main thing, the main sort of culprit so to speak is just like other digital marketing channels over time, especially in the past, I would say 5 years. This is even maybe a shorter development or trend. Digital marketing channels have been getting just like absolutely squeezed. And what I mean there is literally like the ability to get ROI from these channels that we've come to rely on as easy as you used to. I already mentioned like the way that we approached, and I would the way I approached, like this was me. This was not like a directive. This is what I came up with. The way I approached SEO at Help Scout, now more than 10 years ago, 2012. It was a content strategy that people today would make fun of, probably in a video. They would probably, or on social media, they would do it. But like and to describe what it is quickly for people, it was literally just like a keyword list and what I thought the traffic could be from it. Like it was the most plain Jane SEO kind of driven content strategy that you can make. But it worked at the time. It worked because other than like Zendesk, there were no other really competitors doing this. There was way less competition. It was way less sophisticated. And so simple worked. Now, if you were to try to do that today without seriously evaluating like is this traffic that's going to come in going to be worth anything at all, is the stuff that we're writing about here allowing us to like also have an opinion and influence people over time and not just get traffic, is this going to do anything to have people come in qualified so that the people are the leads that our sales folks talk to are actually like informed about the product and ready to buy and validate it. Like if you try to do what I did 10 years ago, you're toast. Like you would have to go look for another job because no way is that enough today. So that I give that sort of little anecdote, that little story just to say like that's been true across like every channel. Every channel has seemingly gotten more difficult. Email has kind of, gone through the ringer with like it's just spam everywhere. Thank God spam controls are still pretty good. But whether you're getting spammed via automation or via outbound, it's like you can't open your work inbox anymore without like at least a dozen emails from people you don't want to talk to.
Right.
So you and then you of course like we've talked in to great extent about search, which is like tougher than it's ever been. The brands that have been around and accrued all of this sort of like domain authority and links and published thousands of pages of content. If you want to start and compete against them today, good luck. It's going to take quite a bit of budget or quite a bit of time, or you should frankly probably find just a different tact entirely. So everything has gotten more competitive. Everything has gotten more sort of self-serving to the sites and the platforms that used to be great sort of like unlocks for traffic. Now they want to be very conservative about it. Even email and its pure decentralized neutral state as a technology got affected just by like too much spam, too much junk, right?
Yep.
So that has led content marketers right now, especially I've talked to a lot of folks I've seen a lot of great writing, a lot of ink has been spilt on this topic. Um, that like they just don't know what to do coming into next year. The one thing that does seem to be working, we've kind of covered, is this mix of like people first, dark social, that's like multimedia based, right? That has been summed up as kind of like build a media company. I think honestly, it's just like a new way to look at content marketing. I think
Yeah,
build a media company. I just get a little bit shy about using because I
it's a
don't
little
want
dramatic.
yeah, yeah. I don't like terms that kind of might have people like self-select out based off of how the term sounds. Like a team of two with minimal budget here's build a media company, and they're like, well, we can't do that, so we won't listen at all. Whereas I think really it's just like it's a whole new way to approach content marketing. We've been engaging in this a lot ourselves. Going through our CEO's account is like a primary place where we post ideas, really trying to get the most out of everything we create with video across all of our platforms, and actually just having the conviction to say we're going to post the stuff in feed. It's going to be native. We don't care about the referral traffic. We will track sort of how people self attribute as they come into Kapwing later and see, hey, hopefully, like, first touch for some of these new customers, is our podcast or is our social posts or it is our videos, but we're comfortable with it not being able to measure it all the way through. We're
Yeah,
fine with like on platform measurements, and we'll find a way to sort of triangulate how this stuff is like affecting the bottom line versus it always being like, yes, they converted on this page on this exact button, kind of
yeah,
thing like people have favored in the past. So that is where we think this little gap of opportunity has opened up. But even if you don't agree with that, I think it would be hard to argue with the fact that the digital channels that we once knew are just like not as they were. Like the opportunity is just it's still there. There's still there are still sort of like folks doing really unique stuff that stands out and breaks out of the noise. There's still people that can work with the algorithms and what people want to see on these channels, in such a way that they still make it economical. But across the board, content marketing ROI is harder to come by. Search is hyper
yeah,
competitive. Social doesn't want to send you any traffic. Email people have been bombarded with. It's like every single one has gotten harder to do. None of them have gotten easier. And so it's going to take this more nuanced approach, we think, to kind of break free here. And so I say all that to say, I really, really have a hard time imagining a world where video doesn't play some part in the solution. Because even if you're looking at things next year and saying, okay, I agree with you on the problem, but we don't feel like the solution is right for us at this time. We feel like maybe more customer marketing is going to be how we're going to, combat against things here. Like we won't focus so much on net new acquisition. We'll get more out of our existing customer base. We'll get more out of the people we have kind of in our ecosystem already. Well, for business B2B brands, like what does that look like? More probably events, more
yep,
webinars, more education. It's like
yep.
no matter where you turn, I kind of see
Onboarding
video.
videos, or maybe not
Yeah,
onboard, but
no, I agree with you. I agree with that. Um,
retention videos.
based, yeah, like
Yeah,
helping people get more basically out of the
yeah,
the product. Yeah, I agree totally. And I think like everywhere you turn, you're going to find video in some fashion here, just because
yeah,
all the other channels that used to be fresh powder are looking pretty messy nowadays. Like they're looking pretty dried up, honestly.
yeah,
So yeah, I think TBD. We're not, certainly not going to prescribe like there's this. This is the only sort of escape hatch here. Um, but I don't think anyone coming in next year working on content or sort of like organic marketing is like, okay, yeah, we'll just change a few things in the 2023 playbook and we're done here. Like it's
right.
basically going to be a full rewrite for a lot of teams. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think people are still, I mean, even though to this whole episode's point, like, yeah, it's been a 10-year marketing trend. Everyone's been saying video, 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 but like people are still, I feel like, our marketers unsure about like how to leverage that or get started because I think people feel scared that like none of their other marketing channels that they're used to are working, but they
Hmm.
still like latch onto them because that's like what they know, and it is easy to attribute. Where video is a little bit more, I don't know, it's a little more of like the Wild West in a way. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think we know it works. We know that, you know, personality and individualism shines through in this type of things. Brand accounts, brand content is like kind of mostly over. I mean, obviously there's use cases, but like, yeah, I think even thinking about this past weekend with this Sam Altman stuff, like he, like the reason that people love him and that's why he's back. Like, and he is OpenAI, you know, like that's why
Hmm.
people are obsessed with him. Um, and same with like, I don't know if you follow crypto, but like the CEO of Binance was just fired, and like he was a huge um, head. And so I feel like now to like really set your company apart, you really have to have these leaders using content and getting their face out there and their voice out there
Hmm.
to be successful. And that could
Even
be you.
it could, and even when I would say like even when the stakes aren't as high, right? Like it doesn't have to be sort of like a comms play or a PR response. It's like lots of really great folks, and I think in a future post I'd love to actually highlight a few founder brand examples that I really like. But I know, for instance, the CEO of DataBox, apologies, his name is slipping me at the moment, but um, follow him for just like really great marketing advice. No breaking news, no controversies as of yet. You know, Godspeed. Hopefully, none in his future. But there are a lot of folks that like they have pulled me into their ecosystem, and I now am aware of the product. And as I think a lot of data has kind of shown, um, folks, when they evaluate a software purchase, we touched on this a little bit with John Collins in the previous episode. Most folks, when they're evaluating a piece of software or product generally, they usually start with a short list. And that short list accrued over time just by the visibility of those brands, right? So you think like, I need this sort of like analytics tool, or I need something to help me measure my marketing. Uh, Most folks, like 80% of people, I think was the data I saw from Gartner, or maybe published in Harvard Business Review for people who want to look that up. They sit down with a list of names that they already know. And most of the time, they pick someone from that list. Like, yes, you
Yeah.
know, they may sort of uncover more. They may uncover more by searching you in G2 or other sort of like platforms. But most people go with the names that they know. And that, I think, again, is sort of like this oblique opportunity for video, because it means this like marketing that creates demand, that builds awareness, that builds familiarity is really important. And you do that through personal accounts, and you do it even better, in our opinion, when those accounts make use of video, right?
Yep.
So it might seem strange, it might seem counterintuitive. Like, what does our target market, knowing our CEO, or knowing how our CEO thinks, why would that matter? Well, it just puts you front and center for when they finally do sit down to buy. And again, like in a lot of cases, the most familiar brand is the one that wins the deal.
Yep.
So that, I would say, is sort of like the long and short of why we think like video is going to play a really really big role in the coming months and years here.
Yeah. So get on it, start practicing. If you seriously though, like a couple episodes ago, I did an episode with Lauren where we were talking about how to get more comfortable on video, and ultimately you just have to get on there and start trying, and you'll get better. And so I think if that's what's stopping you, don't let it. And we'll probably do an episode more about that coming
Yeah,
soon, about things you can do to get more comfortable and look your best on camera and all that. But um, yeah, that's about it.
definitely. And I would say, like I mentioned, we will come back to this topic. I think that we collectively as a company have a lot to say about how AI is going to influence things here. But I feel we really need to unpack that in its own episode. But spoiler alert, I think like we do think AI is going to be um, one of the strongest like kickstarts that video has seen in a while. And as we've kind of covered, like a lot of things have kind of gone video's way. But I think AI could truly be like, it's going to be a great accelerant to many things. But I think in the short term, in the time span where it's fair to make predictions, right? We're not talking about AGI and stuff like this. We're talking about just in the next year. I think AI tools will be one of the biggest breaks that video has seen since like the advent and popularity of social and mobile. I think it's
Hmm.
going to break down
Wow.
barriers for creation even further. And I think that a world with that is filled to the brim with like generated content is actually going to be okay, and some people will flock to that, or some people will use that content when they want it. But a lot of people, I think the majority of people, will want to know when they're engaging with generated content or handmade, I suppose, if you want to call it that, human made. um, and it will be like it'll be preferred and greatly rewarded when advice on stuff that people need to know is coming from a person with lived experiences, is
Yeah.
captured on video. Like I will absolutely prompt AI tools for feedback and kind of like a conversational partner. But if I'm going to set up something at work, I need to hear from a fellow marketer, from a fellow marketing leader, how they did things. I don't want the AI to be giving me solutions in this some sort of abstract. I need the person with the scar tissue, with the big wins and the losses but you didn't know your team was going to react this way, and oh, here's the thing I wish I would have done differently. I need the full lived experience for major important decisions. And
Yeah.
I think like human first, like personality driven content will see a big boon too. So that
Yeah.
remains to be seen, but we'll unpack that in full, I think, in a future episode. So
Definitely. Sweet. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Really appreciate you here at the Shortcut. We're here every week, so make sure to come back. Greg, as always, it's been real. And happy
definitely.
Thanksgiving to all who celebrate.
Yeah. Yeah. You would think it's spring with our color palettes, but I promise this was recorded the day before Thanksgiving. I hope everybody enjoys it.
All right.
Take
See
care.
ya.